Okay, this is lesson 13.4. We're talking about slope-intercept form. It's found on page 592 in your textbook if you're following along. And the key ideas here are intercepts.
Lines up in the gun, Carlos Hyde. The rookie running back flanks him. And Kaepernick goes one over the middle. And that is picked off by Chris Conte.
Needed, so now 2 games, and for Chris Conte, his second interception. What a spectacular play that was.
An intercept is where our line crosses either the x-axis or the y-axis. Where it crosses the y-axis, we call it the Y-intercept. And where it crosses the x-axis, we call it the X-intercept. And when we're talking about the slope-intercept form, we're always talking about the Y-intercept. So here we go, intercepts. The X-intercept of a line is where the x-coordinate of the point is the x-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the x-axis. It occurs when y equals 0. So right here, y is 0 because it's not going up or down here. And it's where what is the x-coordinate when it crosses the x-axis. The y-intercept of a line is the y-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the y-axis. It occurs when the x-coordinate is 0. Okay? So we're looking where it crosses the y-axis for the y-intercept and where it crosses the x-axis for the x-intercept. And then we're going to talk about something called slope-intercept form. Here's a little study tip. It says linear equations can but do not always pass through the origin. Well, we knew that. A lot of times they pass through the origin. So proportional relationships are a special type of linear equation in which b equals 0, which is the y-intercept. Okay, so when the y-intercept is 0, that means the line will cross through at the origin. That's proportional. Remember, that means it shows direct variation. So slope-intercept form. A linear equation written in the form y equals mx plus b is in slope-intercept form. The slope of the line is m. Well, we just did that in the last lesson. Remember where we had y equals mx, and the m represented the slope. But when it was just y equals mx, that was when the line crossed through the origin because, like it says over here, it's when b equaled 0. So we didn't have to put it on there. They always pass through the origin. Well, now we're going to talk about lines that don't have to pass through the origin. So the form y equals mx plus b is in slope-intercept form. The slope of the line is m, and the y-intercept of the line is b. Okay, so b is where the y-intercept is. And we just say y equals mx plus b, or you can say slope-intercept form. And actually, once you get into algebra in 8th grade or beyond, y equals mx plus b or slope-intercept form become things that you're talking about all the time. So let's look at their example. It says, find the slope and the y-intercept of the graph of each linear equation. So let's look. Here's the line. I can get that glare off of there. There we go. Here's the equation. Y equals, and look, there's the m. It's what's the coefficient of our x term. And here's the b. It's the constant that follows our x term. So when it asks for the slope, we can just look right here. Our slope is -4. That's our coefficient of the x term, or y equals mx plus b. Okay, whatever comes back here. So the slope here is -4, and our y-intercept would be -2. Okay, not 2, but -2. And it says right here, because what's added, well, -2 is added. I just look for what's the constant back here, -2. So it says the slope is -4 and the y-intercept is -2. Now this equation's a little different because this equation is not already solved for us for y. So what we have to do is we can look at this. Y equals -5. Oh, y minus -5. Oops. We want to get it to be y equals 3/2 x. Well, if we want to solve for y, what we have to do is add 5 to both sides. So now we just have y over here by itself. So that's good. Equals, and now these are not like terms, so we just have to keep them separate here. 3 halves x plus 5. Well, now that it's written, solve for y. We have y equals mx plus b. Here's our slope. 3 over 2 is our slope. That's our slope. And 5, or positive 5, but you can just write 5, is our y-intercept. So if we had a graph here, and we were going to graph this, we would go up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's where our line is going to cross our y-axis. That's what the y-intercept means. And our slope means it's going to go up 3 over 2, up 3 over 2. So something like that if we were going to graph it. Okay? It doesn't ask us to graph them, but if we were going to graph them on your own, so these are the ones, write these down. That's what I'll be asking for on the quiz. It says, find the slope in the y-intercept. Well, finding the slope in the y-intercept will be relatively easy. So for number 1, it gives us y equals 3x minus 7. Well, this is nice because it's already solved for y. So m, or our slope, is right here. Slope equals 3. If you wanted to write 3 over 1, you could, but you don't have to. It's just 3. And the y-intercept, y-intercept equals, and we look right here, or we look right here, negative 7. Negative 7. For the second one, little different because this is not already solved for y. So y minus 1 equals negative 2/3 x. We'll have to add 1 to both sides. And now we get y equals negative 2/3 x plus 1. Now finding the slope in it, y-intercept's pretty easy. Here's the slope, negative 2/3. And the y-intercept equals positive 1, or just 1. For this example, graphing a linear equation in slope-intercept form, now we're just going to use these pieces of information. Graph y equals negative 3x plus 3. So the negative 3 here is our slope, and the positive 3 here is our y-intercept. So on the graph, we go up to 0, 3, or 3, where it crosses the y-axis, and we put a dot there. Because we know it's going to cross there, that's the y-intercept. And now a slope of negative 3 means down 3 over 1. So we put a dot at down 3 over 1, and we can draw our line right there. And you'll notice it goes down 3 over 1 again here. And if the graph went high enough, you'd see it went back 1 and up 3, and it continues on up and down like that. To find the X-intercept, what they said is well, draw the line and see where it crosses the x-axis. And that is for sure one way to do it. But another way to find the X-intercept is to just realize what the X-intercept means. Yes, it means where it crosses the x-axis, but it also means, hold on, let me write the equation here, y equals negative 3x plus 3. Remember, the X-intercept is where y equals 0. It's what is x when y equals 0. Y equals 0 on the x-axis, so what is the x value there? So let's put 0 in for y and see what this equals. So if we put 0 in for y, and now we want to find out what x is. So we subtract 3 from both sides. and we get negative 3 equals negative 3 times x. Divide both sides by negative 3. And x equals negative 3 over negative 3 is positive 1. So our x-intercept is 1. So we could either graph it to find out where it crosses the x-axis, or we could put 0 in for y and find out what x equals. Both ways to find the x-intercept. I do like these problems here. Match the equation with its graph, and I identify the slope and the y-intercept. Well, if we look here, there are 3 graphs and there are 3 equations. And we have to figure out which graph goes with which equation. And right off the bat, I notice there's only one slope that slopes down from left to right. And remember, when it slopes down, that means it's a negative slope. So here's a positive slope because it's going up. Here's a positive slope, it's going up. And here's a negative slope because it's coming down. So we look up here. This slope is 2. This slope is 1 over 3. This slope is negative 2 over 3. That's our only negative slope. So for number 6, C. So for number 6, C. So I'll write that down so I remember that for number, we have 4, 5, and 6. Number 6 equals C. Well, now we've got these two graphs that go with these two equations. And let's look. Here's a y-intercept of +1, which means our line will cross the y-axis at 1. This one crosses the y-axis at -2. This one crosses the y-axis at 1. Crossed right at 1. So 4 goes with B, which better mean that 5 goes with A, so let's double check. So -2, yep, we said it crossed at -2. And then look at its slope. Rise over run, 1 over 3, up 1 over 3. Yep, that's got a slope of 1 over 3. It crosses at -2. Definitely 5 and A go together. And it does say identify the slope and the y-intercept. Slope here is 2, y-intercept is 1. Slope here is 1/3, y-intercept is -2. And the slope here is -2/3, and the y-intercept is 1. You can work through some of these odd problems here and check them in the back of the book. And make sure you go and do journal page 310, which is for lesson 13-4.